My name is Pernille Moore, and in this video, we're going to talk about how neurodivergent people actually have a head start when it comes to the awakening. So the first thing is that when you get your diagnosis or when you realize that you are probably autistic or have ADHD, that is not really a diagnosis. It's not anything negative. It's more a permission slip. It's not a label. It's a permission slip. For most of us, getting the diagnosis is absolute relief because it just makes everything fall into place. We suddenly understand that the way that we perceive the world is completely normal. What happens when all the masks start to fall is that you become very much clear on who you actually are. How you actually perceive the world is different than what neurotypical people perceive it to be, and there's nothing wrong with that. The way that you perceive it is in many ways more in line with an non-dual awakening than anything else. And getting the diagnosis can, for many neurodivergent people, be a spiritual catalyst. For years, you have worn those filtered glasses where you were forced to be in the world and see the world through a neurotypical lens, which never really made any sense. So getting the diagnosis is not you getting new glasses on, it's taking them off and seeing the world the way that you actually always have seen it. Now, masking is a way that we are trying to fit into society. There was made a study in 2017 that showed that masking is leading to immense exhaustion and mental health strain. So what is unmasking? Unmasking actually has a title in Buddhist non-duality. It's the spiritual practice of non-attachment. So you're not attached to any mask anymore. You're not attached to being in the world in a certain way anymore. You're shedding all the layers of conditioned identity. And that is basically what is happening in every single awakening path. So you're basically discovering that who you were told you are is not at all who you actually are. And there are some parallels between unmasking and the non-dual awakening path, because it's the same process. Because if you think of it, in spiritual awakening and non-dual awakening, it is constantly questioning, who am I? Beneath all the roles, all the things you were conditioned to believe, who are you actually? The neurodivergent unmasking is asking exactly the same. And the moment you throw out the neurotypical script, you will stand out more as who you actually are. And both journeys are revealing a reality that is shaped by perceptions. For example, the neurotypical way of perceiving reality is one way. Your neurodivergent experience is completely different. And in the non-dual awakening, what we are pointing to is that neither are an absolute fixed truth. This idea that the autistic cognition can involve a more direct and less filtered experience as more immediate and less automatically organized by social narratives, which means that the way you are in the world is more unfiltered and direct and not influenced by how you're supposed to be in the world. It suggests that insight of non-duality is the softening of boundaries between the self and the world. It's something that many autistic people experience as a baseline of their cognitive style. Your neurobiology might already be wired for that direct perception that spiritual practices are trying to cultivate. You may already have sensed that interconnectedness that meditators spend years of cultivating, trying to get a glimpse of. And that is where it starts to get really interesting. The way that your mind works might actually be a huge asset for your non-dual awakening. And that is why I created the Awakening curriculum and why I can warmly recommend you to work with it. The lower fives, Fetter 1 to 5, is where your hardest work is going to be, because that is about demasking and it's about noticing all the different ways that you're identifying in your life. The first fetter is where you are noticing the identification with thought. You become aware that your thoughts does not hold any truth at all. And the more you demask yourself, the more you can see that there is a huge difference between what you think and what is actually arising in this moment. So the first fetter is where we are demasking the idea of who you are based on your thoughts. This is also one of the most complicated ones because you have so many deep-seated ideas about you that is based on thought. The second fetter is where we are de-identifying with the feelings and emotions. And it's really becoming very, very clear on a feeling is a sensation in the body and a thought attached to it. It's nothing else. Really, truly slowing down, zooming in and looking into that. And I know for a lot of you, it can be very, very uncomfortable to be in the body. What we want you to become aware of is that extra growth that uncomfortableness is. Look into that. Really zoom in and slow down to that sensation in the body. What is it right now in this situation that makes it extra uncomfortable? Because for most of us, we have had a very uncomfortable feeling in the body. We have put a lid on it because we could not stim, or we could not do whatever we felt like doing in that moment. So we were just powering through, which has just given us absolute exhausting and burnout. I obviously don't want you to do that. I want you to see through the delusion of it being uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that it is comfortable. I want you to notice that any experience that you have is empty of any inherent existence, which means that, for example, when I'm out and about, I normally have earplugs in and I have blue glasses on. For example, I have found out that when I'm wearing blue glasses, instead of all sounds happening in the same space with the same volume and with the same immediacy, it's kind of like they become layered. So I can hear sounds differently when I'm wearing my blue glasses. Which means that when I'm out and about and wearing my blue glasses, I still can get overwhelmed by sounds, obviously, because it's still an overwhelm to the senses that my brain is just not equipped for. But the feeling of guilt, the feeling of shame, the thoughts about it, that being wrong and that I shouldn't feel like that, are completely gone. I'm absolutely fine with how I'm experiencing the world. It's how my brain is experiencing the world. There cannot be anything wrong with that. So what I'm doing is I'm adapting and I'm finding out how can I support this meat suit the best way when I'm out and about, and then I'm accommodating with that. When I'm then experiencing something, I'm not adding to the experience. I'm allowing the experience to be as raw as it can be. And I do not hold anything against myself in the way that I experience it. It's just what is arising. And in that, you suddenly realize that the sounds, I'm just using sound now as an example because it's one of the things that I deal with. Sounds and smells are a lot for me. That the sounds that I hear are not only happening in the auditory field. The sounds that influence me the most are not so much the sounds that I'm hearing. It's the sounds that I'm feeling. Because to me, a sound is felt in the body, and I have visual imprints of sound as well. For example, some sounds can be very sharp and they have a white glimpse that is happening when I hear the sound. And it's not so much the sound that is a lot, it's the white glimpse that is the exhausting part. So it's the seeing of the sound that is exhausting me. By realizing that this is the way that synesthesia works, is part of being autistic, I can be in the world differently. I can be in the world with a full acceptance to how it is arising for me. And that is what I would recommend for you to work with too during your awakening process. So I want you to be in that space where everything is up for re-examination. Do you prefer your socks inside out? Do you prefer your foods not touching one another? Do you prefer blue glasses and headphones? Do you prefer soft clothes or tight clothes? Do you prefer big shoes or very tight shoes? Do you prefer scarves and hats and sweaters and squishy toys? Whatever you prefer is what you're allowing to help you in this situation. You're deconstructing a lifetime of borrowed preferences that were never yours. I just want to come with a warning here, because it's the first thing that often happens when you get a diagnosis, that you go from one concept of being one thing into another concept, and now you're autistic or now you're ADHD. It's okay to have a period where you put that hat on, But just be careful that you're not creating a new concept, because it will eventually be as limiting as the old concept. You need to allow yourself to be in that open, flowy space where things are rising and dissolving all on their own. Let your preferences be discovered moment to moment and not dictated by a label. I want you to practice unconditional acceptance and ambiguity, because both needs to be present all the time. So in the lower fives, we're working with the identification of thought, feeling, and emotion, all the things you want and all the things you don't want. That is going to take the longest time. But the reward is in the higher fives. In the higher fives, from the 6th fetter and up to the 10th, we're working with things that turns out that neurodiverse people are normally living their lives here. We're working with the idea of the subject-object delusion. We're working with the idea that time is not a fixed concept, a linear concept. And both are something that neurodivergent people experience all the time. You, as a child, probably remember having experiences where you were sitting out in nature and you were inhaling a tree and exhaling a sheep. That it was just like that open unity with everything, and you were a part of that. There was no differentiation between it. And if you have ADHD or autism as well, but there has been studies made about ADHD and how they have this time fluid concept, which is what we're working with in the 7th fetter. So what I would like for you to realize, it is that when you start with your diagnosis and you start with your unmasking, it is a huge opportunity for you to work with your non-dual awakening as well in the same breath. It's not about you becoming the perfect awakened neurodivergent person. It's about an unconditional acceptance to what is arising. It's about letting your socks being inside out and your food not touching. It's about blue glasses and headphones, squishy toys and big sweaters. It's about accepting that sensory overwhelm in a room without adding to the experience with thoughts about that you shouldn't be like this. Reality is inherently empty of any existence, with any fixed meanings. And so are you. Your neurodivergence is a dynamic, unfolding expression of life. So the freedom lies in you having unconditional acceptance towards you and setting you free to be in the world the way that you are. And by that, you're setting the entire world free to be as it is. So you're not broken and you're not behind. You're unfolding in a way that is absolutely unique to you. And you can allow your neurodivergent mind to be the lens that you are viewing the world through without any inherent existence in the middle. So to all my neurodivergent friends out there, I would like to hear from you in the comment section. How have you experienced this? What do you want me to make another video about? I would like to make videos where I address non-dual awakening and neurodiversity. So kindly write in the comment section and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. We have created a course of our first fetter material. This course will walk you step by step through all of the ways in which identification is created and selfing happens. If you've been struggling to see through the self-structure or have that first awakening shift, this course contains hundreds of tools to help you discover the selfing mechanisms when they're happening, and then see through the illusion of identification that are created. Along with over 14 hours of videos, this $49 course contains a full book worth of summaries, extrapolations on the videos, written inquiry suggestions, and other text. So work slowly, leave time for integration. This is powerful material and it can be life-changing.